So you've just bought a new camera, but there's dozens of lenses out there and it can be a little intimidating. Fortunately though, you only need 3 lenses to really do 99% of most photography and videography. And this is what we call the Holy Trinity. This is a core set of lenses that will cover you for pretty much everything. In today's video, it's a bit of a guide onto what exactly makes up this trinity of lenses, what aspects and sort of qualities each of these lenses have, and what you need to be looking for when it comes to building your own trinity of lenses. For a quick recommendation, if you're a Nikon Z mount user or even a Sony E mount user, I recommend looking into the Tamron G2 range. Specifically the 16 to 30mm, the 28 to 75, and the 70 to 180mm. What makes the Tamron G2 range so special is, first off, they are inexpensive. Starting out building a Trinity, it can be a very expensive endeavor. The issue is if you buy cheap lenses, it's basically going to give you, well, bad photography. Really, with the Tamron G2 range, you manage to both save money but also have good quality lenses, and the Tamron G2 are good sharpness, but they're not going to hurt your wallet. Second thing about the Tamron G2 range is that they are lightweight, especially compared to other equivalent lenses in their range. So these lenses weigh altogether 2 kilograms. Now, there are some Trinity lenses that will weigh 2 kilograms on their own. But with the Tamron G2 range, 2 kilograms, that's absolutely nothing. And that's gonna make a difference if you are someone that likes to run around with 3 lenses. Third thing about these lenses is the consistency across them. Now, when I'm building out my Trinity, I do like to have lenses that are relatively the same build. So if I'm, say, shooting a video or even just having a collage of photos, I do like there to be some consistency in terms of the quality and sharpness. I don't want it to be too jarring that I've switched out to different lenses. Really, the only thing to me that should be changing is the focal length, and that's it. And with the Tamron G2 range, they are very consistent, specifically this range. So you do have the same level of bokeh at 9 blades, same speed of autofocus, with exception to the 70 to 180mm, which is a bit slower. So if you're looking for a consistent range of lenses that are both light on you physically as well as light on your wallet, the Tamron G2 range is definitely worth looking into. I will also say this whole range of lenses are zoom lenses. You can of course build your Trinity out with prime lenses, but the issue there is a prime lens, while better in low light, better quality and faster, is only going to cover one focal range. So a 50mm prime is a 50mm prime, whereas the 28 to 75 lens here is covering, well, all the focal ranges between 28 and 75. So with this range of Tamron G2, and in general when building out your own trinity of lenses, it is good to start out with zoom lenses, as it does give you a whole lot more versatility and space to really find what your niche is. And if you're curious what camera I use to shoot with these lenses, I use the Nikon Z8. Lens number 1, the walk-around lens, the mid-range lens, the all-rounder lens. Now, typically this lens will go below 50mm and above 50mm, and this is probably going to be absolutely the first lens you should be getting for your camera when you're getting your new camera, as it does cover all the general focal ranges. So it can do a standard wide ranges as well as close-ups and your mid-range shots. But I will say, when it comes to the 24 to 70mm or the 28 to 75mm, there is a big trap you need to be aware about these lenses, and that's the fact that this lens will almost never come off your camera. Don't get me wrong, this is a really good lens if you're getting into event photography or videography, or going to locations where you don't know what you're necessarily getting yourself into, as it does, cover the general ranges. It's an all-rounder. I do recommend every now and then get into the habit of taking this lens off the camera and trying out different lenses and really appreciating the capabilities of your cameras as well as all the other lenses you have. The walk-around lens is also good for general mid-range shots, and it's in cases where you want the subject to be the focus but also have a bit of context with the background. Lens 2, the landscape lens, and the landscape lens is basically a wide lens and it goes below the focal range of 50mm. This lens is going to be generally good for landscape photography and architectural photography, and in general use of grabbing spaces where you want to fit as much as possible into your frame. So this lens is definitely going to be ideal in cramped spaces where you maybe want to get a subject and the space in it, and it's not something you're really going to get with longer lenses or even a standard mid-range lens. That said, I would not use a wide lens for portrait shots. It can definitely be good as a creative choice, but the thing about wide lenses is they do tend to distort the face rather significantly when close up to your subject. So that creative choice might be cool and interesting, but if you have someone that, say, paid for a nice portrait shot of themselves, they're not going to appreciate you making their face look like a fish. People don't look distorted at every distance from the wide lens. I find a general sort of mid-range distance with a wide lens and your subject won't look distorted. It's just when you get to sort of that portrait close-up distance with the wide lens that you really start to see distortion. But a wide lens is also good if you are shooting on a full frame sensor, because I don't know about you, but I will often shoot content for both vertical and horizontal aspect ratios. So it is good to have a wide lens where you shoot on that, and then you can actually crop into a vertical aspect ratio without your subject looking like they're crammed into the frame. Lens number 3, and yes, I can't say the number 3, but lens number 3, the big one, otherwise known as the telephoto lens. This is a lens that goes above 70mm, and it's ideal for a lot of portrait photography as it does keep the focus purely on your subject while throwing the background completely out of focus. So it's all about the person, and this is also the best lens for the most accurate representation of a person's facial structure. As I noted, with a wider lens, it does tend to distort, but with a longer lens, you definitely get, what you see is what you get. You see the person in all their beauty. This lens also has incredible reach compared to the other two lenses. So if you're into sports photography or bird photography, where you can't necessarily get really close to the subject, this is definitely going to be the lens for you. And generally, when it comes to telephoto lens shooting, you are going to have to factor in stabilization a lot more. So it is going to be a little more difficult to get particular shots, and you are going to struggle to frame a bit more. A telephoto lens definitely does take more practice than other lenses, but it is well worth it. And what I'd like to note about the Tamron G2 70-180mm is that this lens is actually very light compared to its equivalents. And at 885 grams, it should be a fairly lightweight lens. Now, early on, I did say this Trinity will cover 99% of most of your photography and videography, but what about that 1%? Well, then you have specialist lenses. And as you develop as a photographer or videographer, you will start to find your niche and lean into some more interesting shots. And these specialist lenses will get you something that a standard Trinity will not. You do have a very cool lens, a macro lens. This is basically a super close-up lens. This is the lens you're going to use if you want to shoot bugs or eyeballs. And Tamron does actually have a very good macro lens, a 70mm macro lens. Works great, sharp quality. Again, it's got the same level of consistency as the rest of the Trinity here, so that's a good option to pick up. And if you're someone that wants to incorporate a macro lens into your Trinity, I do recommend getting your telephoto lens that does macro. So there are a lot of great lenses out there that can do, standard portrait shots, as well as those super close-up shots. Then you have the pancake lens or the super wide lens. And this is pretty straightforward. This is a wide lens, but it's incredibly wide and it's also very small. So it's going to be ideal in situations where you want to keep your camera as small as possible, say to the extent of even just fitting into your coat pocket. Lastly, you do have a super telephoto lens, and this is a lens that goes above 300mm. This is going to get you some absolutely cool shots, but it does require a lot of preparation. Very heavy, they're very big, they're not subtle at all, and you really do need to know what you're getting yourself into when setting up these lenses. But that's the Holy Trinity and a mention of a few specialist lenses. So just to recap, your standard Trinity is made up of a mid-range all-rounder lens, which goes below 50mm and above 50mm. You have a wide range lens, which is good for landscapes and architecture, which goes below 50mm. And for your portraits and your close-ups and your just zoom in shots, you have a telephoto lens, which goes above 70mm. But we all have our own Trinity of lenses. So let me know in the comments below what your Trinity is or what you hope to get.